Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Will here with Schedule Fly, and I was really excited that John Zucker let me come interview him. John is in Charleston, and he is very well known there and has been very successful for a couple of decades, which says a lot in itself. And as an example of that success, in 2019, this year, the Charleston City paper named John the best chef in Charleston. Now that's not easy to come by. If you know anything about the culinary world, Charleston's an incredible culinary scene. There's a lot of great chefs doing amazing stuff there. So that's a big deal for sure. And another big deal about John is he actually graduated #1 in his class at Le Cordon Bleu in Paris back when he graduated in the late 90s. And that's amazing. I mean, great chefs come from all over the world to go to Le Cordon Bleu, and they compete vigorously for that #1 spot. And John took it. So clearly, the man can prepare great meals, great food, incredible dishes. What he can also do is he can lead a team of people to be successful for a long time. And that's a very unique skill set in itself. I mean, he started Crew Catering about 20 years ago, opened Crew Café a year after that, and just opened Perlu a few years ago. And, he's had people that have been with him over a decade. He's as you hear, when you listen, he's a very humble guy. He's very authentic. He's very genuine. He clearly cares about his people. He cares about the food he puts on the plate. He cares about the experience his guests have. He cares about his community. And it's no surprise that he's been able to endure in a very competitive market that's had, various economic cycles and so on and so forth that you have over the last couple of decades. And here he is, still rocking. So now, John, when you listen to this, I'm really bummed about the Dodgers, as I know you are. The day we recorded this, the LA Dodgers were starting in the playoffs, and they had a game that night, and they won that game. They won 6-0, I believe, or maybe 6-1 over the Washington Nationals. They lost the series, and John and I talk at the end of this podcast briefly about the Dodgers, a very short clip and a very long conversation about hospitality. But John, we blew it. It's a bummer, and it really was crushing. So we'll share in the misery in that and just look to next year. And hope springs eternal, right? So, folks, thank you for listening to this. Thank you for indulging me with my comments there. But this is a great conversation. It's a great talk about hospitality, what it takes. John's a phenomenal dude, and this was a lot of fun. Thanks for listening. All right, what's up, y'all? It is Will with Schedule Fly, and we are live, and I am here in Charleston, or North Charleston, I guess, and I'm with John Zucker, and John's a badass. Let's just put it that way. He has been in this business for a while. He started Crew Catering, about 20 years ago almost.
Catering's been open 20 years, and the cafe will be 20 in February.
Crew Catering would be 20. Crew Cafe would be 20 in February, and then you opened Perlu 2 years ago.
It'll be 2 years in November.
Okay.
Yeah, it went fast.
And you were the #1 graduate in your class at Le Cordon Bleu.
Oh, you checked your...
I did my research.
Exactly. I did. I graduated top of my class, believe back in 95. Went to Paris, didn't know any French, and just made sure I learned as much as I could.
All right. Well, I want to find out more about that. And one other thing I read is that you spend a lot of your free time thinking about this stuff and thinking about how you can keep it fresh.
For that, even in our catering, we do everything from scratch. We don't pre-order anything that's pre-made, and we want to put out the best possible product that we can. And we started here at the catering. We started in a really small 700-foot square kitchen right around the corner from where the cafe is, and then we moved up here, up in North Charleston about 9 years ago. It helped us to improve our product and kind of hit more people out there.
Okay.
So I haven't shown you the kitchen yet, but I will afterwards. And
yeah, I want to see it.
You'll see exactly how we operate. We're in full operation right now.
Where's the cafe?
The cafe's on 18 Pinckney Street. It's about a block away from Market. We're fortunate to be in an area that is close to the market, so we can service a lot of the hotels around there.
Yeah.
And we're also right across the street from the carriage tours, so we get a lot of people from that. And, we focus on the locals, though. We want mostly our locals to come on in there and have a seat, and we've been doing business with them and making sure that they're taken care of for 20 years.
20 years, man.
Yeah.
Tim, I tip my hat, literally.
Thanks.
I mean, that's fantastic. It's a tough business. It's hard
Absolutely.
To do that.
You can't do it without good people, so.
Well, you have Angel here. And Angel, what's your last name?
Powell?
Angel Powell. So Angel's awesome and does PR with John. And, one of the things I've learned is that you can generate PR and interest early in a place, but then to sustain those customers for a long time is a real challenge. And I've talked to people that said, yeah, we got a lot of people coming in the doors, and then we forgot how to take care of them when they were there, and it's a problem when we're having to figure out how to make that happen. Like there's a place in New York that really popular, and all this stuff, but you got to keep them coming back, and that's
we build relationships with our customers, and a lot of them are people that I hang out with outside of work, and have built friendships with. And when they come in, they know that they're getting a good product, and they're also going to be in a atmosphere which is similar to their home.
Yeah.
And we try to create that at both of my restaurants.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Okay, so take us back. So you went to Le Cordon Bleu. You didn't speak French. So what was your initial entry into hospitality? Have you been cooking since you were young? Or?
So I always loved Colorado. And
Is that where you're from?
No, I'm from California. Okay. I grew up in Los Angeles.
Okay.
But when I got to be about 17 years old, I didn't like Los Angeles that much, but my whole family was there. So
why didn't you like it?
It's just crazy, too many people.
I lived in Burbank for 2 years. I know what you're
You did?
about. Yeah.
It's just too many people, and I moved up to Northern California, went to school up there at Sonoma State, and my dream was always to go to Colorado.
Had you been there when you were, did you go skiing when you were young?
My cousin lived in Breckenridge.
Oh, God.
So when I was about 11 through 13, my mom would send me there to go skiing every Easter.
Oh.
And basically, she was getting rid of me, but,
You're like,
okay, yeah, I'll take that.
One day to acclimate to the altitude, and I'm good.
Well, at that age, you don't have to acclimate
Yeah, you don't
much.
when you're young. That's right.
Yeah.
You do now.
Oh, yeah. I've had altitude sickness. It's terrible.
Me too.
So ultimately, I wanted to end up in Colorado. I love that state. I love skiing, which unfortunately I haven't done recently. But I ended up moving there. And, of course, when you move to a ski town, if you want to ski, you get in the restaurant business.
Yep.
And you work nights and ski during the day.
How old were you then when you were out there?
I was, I think, 27.
Okay. Got it.
So I hadn't cooked until then.
You hadn't cooked, and you had already been through college, and...
Well, I didn't do that well in college.
Okay, fair
so
enough. That's fine.
I ended up knowing that I wanted to do culinary eventually, and that's what I really focused on.
Okay, yeah.
So I ended up moving to Colorado, landed a job in a restaurant, and I was dishwashing. No, I was actually an SA.
Okay.
So I was a
Is this in Breckenridge?
Yeah, a server assistant in Breckenridge. Didn't like that vibe of the front of the house because they're all about money.
Okay, yeah.
And I was making great money.
Yeah.
But I loved the kitchen. I became friends with them and then ended up moving from SA to dishwashing.
Okay, so you took a step back in income to do something that you actually enjoyed.
Exactly.
Or at least an environment or the part of the restaurant that you enjoyed, which is the back of the house.
Right. Well, I was new to that, so I hadn't learned. I didn't know the separation or the difference of how people reacted to their jobs in a restaurant. And the front of the house is definitely a different vibe.
Yeah.
So I was dishwashing, and part of dishwashing, you do a little bit of cooking at this restaurant, and I was good at it. So, I ended up being a cook. And a year later, someone came up to me and said, "Do you want to be my kitchen manager at my restaurant?" So I went to another restaurant. I was a kitchen manager.
Let me ask you this. Let me stop you. What you said you were good at? Why? What happened early was it because you have maybe a
sense of a creative personality, and it just really, you felt in flow when you were doing that, or
I think at the time I just got it.
you just got it? Okay.
Yeah, I understood what it took to put something out of good quality, not overcooking it, not.
You cared.
Yeah, I mean, it just came natural.
Yeah, okay.
It really did.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I knew that this is probably something I want to pursue because it came so natural.
Okay.
I do remember when I was younger, my dad used to cook a lot. My mom cooked almost every night, but I wasn't that involved in it. And then my dad would cook special things occasionally, and kind of sparked my interest as a young kid.
Okay.
But then once I got in the kitchen, which I had never had that experience until I was 27, it just, like I said, became natural.
You know, it's really interesting when I love these stories when somebody and sometimes there's people that find it even later in life, but when you, through serendipity, you find the thing that you go, this is it.
Yeah.
I love it. And some people go through their whole life maybe not finding that. You know, they wind up in some job they don't like, and then they, you know, and whatever. But it's a great thing when you find that.
I mean, my whole family didn't know where I was going to end up.
Yeah. Were they worried?
I'm sure they were, but I mean, the things back then that your parents would let you do at a younger age.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was 16, my mom and dad let me take my car and drive to Sun Valley, Idaho, Park City, Utah, Colorado, and make this round trip at 16 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And we kind of grew up fast.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I didn't really know. I was terrible at college. I didn't enjoy it at all. And
it's not for everybody.
No.
We think it is, but it's not.
No. And I even think now that if I was going to do it over, I would have taken a break before I went to college.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
And try and find out what I want to do. Maybe I would have landed in a restaurant, and maybe I would have learned to cook earlier. Maybe
saved a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
I want my kids to do that. I've got 3 kids. My daughter's 15. They're going down this track right to college. Everybody goes right to college. I'm like, dude, just
slow it down.
Time. Yeah, for sure.
So eventually, I started cooking in this restaurant, and people saw that I had the ability to understand the position of a cook and I really grasped food cost real well.
Okay.
And it just came natural to me. So eventually, managing a kitchen was the next step in that town. Did that for about a year, and then I said, I need to get serious about this. And I started looking at culinary schools. Excuse me. And at the time, there weren't any real good culinary schools in the United States.
Okay.
There was CIA and the one in California, I can't remember the name of it, but
yeah.
they really weren't well known for creating chefs as they are now.
Okay.
So I immediately went to my family and said, I'm interested in this, and I think that my only option is to go to Europe. And my cousin that lived in Breckenridge and myself took a backpacking trip into Europe, and we went through Lyon and Paris, and we went to several schools, and we looked at them.
Wow.
And there were 2 that were really top on my list, and one was Le Cordon Bleu, and then one in Lyon that was, I can't remember the name of it, but those were the 2 options.
Okay.
And came back to the States, and I said, this is what I want to do. And I got a sponsor and moved to Paris for a little over a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you love it?
I did.
I
would go back tomorrow.
How did you become number 1 in your class? What was
it was really competitive.
Yeah, I bet it was.
There's people from all over the world, and there's also housewives, and they're taking classes. I mean, there's a real mix of people at the school. And I played baseball my whole life, and I was real good at it. I played it in college, and I have
Dodgers fan?
Oh, yeah.
So am I.
Nice.
Heck yeah. Tonight.
8:30.
Yes.
Can't wait.
Me too.
So that competitive nature in me was brought over to the food industry and was fueled by these people from Japan, Portugal, Norway. I mean, everyone from all over the world was attending the school, and they wanted to do well.
Yeah.
that competitiveness really sparked more interest in me. I didn't really know that there was a top of your class person.
Yeah.
But I knew that these people next to me really wanted to beat me.
Okay.
And not physically, but do better than me.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was leaving or preparing to leave the United States, I was just going to do culinary classes. And my mom looked at me and said, if you're going there, you go do pastry and you do the culinary and you do the full program so you learn everything.
Right.
Best decision I made. I'd never done pastries or anything other than the other culinary side of cooking, and got into the pastry classes, and it just really came natural again to me. And these people next to me especially from Japan, they were so competitive. They wanted to do so much better than anyone else. It really, really sparked my history of competitiveness, and I wanted to do well.
That's awesome. I love that.
I used to take pictures of all the food and see the chefs look at my food and just be amazed that I was producing that food that well. And it really was satisfying.
I bet it was.
It really was.
That's awesome.
So then eventually, after doing both courses, I think it was 9 months of school, and then they'd give you a month off in between 3 sessions. We get to the end, and they make you do a final exam, and they basically give you 12 ingredients and say, all right, make something out of these 12 ingredients. And then they put you in this auditorium with the kitchen, and they make you speak in French and present your dish or prepare your dish.
Oh, so you had to learn French too?
Yeah. They had translators, but
it's not an easy language to learn.
No, well, I mean,
maybe when you're
what I did is I learned 10 words a day.
Okay. Yeah.
And they were mainly culinary words, and then I had a book that gave me the sentences I needed to communicate with people around town.
Okay.
If I needed to order something or ask directions or whatever I needed, I had those basic lines down. In Paris, if you try to speak French, they will help you. If you're an American and you go there and you speak English and you don't try to speak French, they will not like you. So as long as I was trying, eventually the French that I was trying with would speak English.
Okay. Yeah.
Initially they wouldn't.
Right.
But they saw I was trying.
They saw you were trying. Je parle un petit peu français.
Un petit peu.
It's about as far as I
can get.
It's
been years. But so they put me in this auditorium, and I'm preparing my dish to present to these people who are watching me cook, and it's 7 a.m. First of all, when I arrived at 5 a.m. to start prepping, my chef is there, grabs a bottle of wine, slams it on the table, and says, Monsieur Zucker, let's get started. And pours us a glass of wine at 5 a.m.
Oh, boy.
The true French way. And, ended up in the auditorium atmosphere, and I was doing the souffle dish. It was filet of sole with a salmon souffle in the middle of it. It's the dish I came up with. And halfway through me preparing this really fragile dish, the electricity goes out. The whole building. So I have this.
The Japanese were sabotaging.
Yeah,
you.
Exactly. We had no idea what was going on. Honestly, that thought went through my mind.
I bet it did. Where are
so, 10 minutes later, electricity's not on. 20 minutes later, electricity's not on. So the chef comes in and says, "Hey, we're gonna cancel this and do it again tomorrow." All my friends that were sitting in the auditorium, they all brought champagne because we were going to have some champagne afterwards. Well, we start pouring the champagne because the chef said, we're not doing this till tomorrow. So we start drinking the champagne. We're getting real happy. And the electricity goes back on. Chef comes back in. Okay, Monsieur Zucker, we're gonna do this now.
Oh, God.
Well, at 5 a.m, I started drinking wine.
Started drinking wine. Now you've had the champagne.
Yeah. And I was feeling pretty good. And I had this souffle that was sitting in the refrigerator, and I don't know, and it was already had the eggs in it. So, I wasn't even sure if it was going to work. So I continued through, came out nice. They seemed to enjoy it, obviously, because I graduated top of my class. But ultimately, that experience also got me ready for restaurant life, adapting.
Yes.
And overcoming these obstacles.
Which happen all the time.
All the time. Every day.
Well, so do you wake up now and have wine and champagne every morning so that you can recreate this amazing experience?
I'm not going to say I haven't done that.
That's your secret.
But the French like their wine.
Yeah.
And they bring it when these crucial points of your life are going to happen. And it was it made me relax. I was really nervous. One of the dishes they had us prepare was a chartreuse of pigeon, and it's a really intricate dish. So the fact that I was relaxed, and that's what he was trying to come across with the wine, is, hey, relax, have fun with this.
Okay.
And that, we try to promote that in all of our restaurants and the catering. We want to make sure everyone's comfortable with their surroundings, and if they're not, we try to get them in a better frame of mind.
That's a big part of this is you have so many little metaphorical fires and things that happen in restaurants all the time. And if you freak out on these things, it just cascades, doesn't it? And that translates over to ultimately to the experience for the guest. The staff gets stressed. The server's not all there. You can't
Absolutely.
do that.
I mean,
guests feel that, don't they?
I think they do. And we're in a small restaurant. We have I don't know if you've been in the cafe, but we have 4 seats that sit right at the kitchen, and the same at Perlu.
Yeah.
And so we're on a stage.
Okay.
And we make sure that, one, we're handling the food properly because everyone's looking, and 2, that you're enjoying yourself because they're going to get that vibe if you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole restaurant, and it'll transfer from this one person at the chef's table, and it'll go back to the people at the community table, and then it'll go to another table, and it's viral.
Yep.
So the moment people walk in the door, you got to make sure that they're comfortable with their surroundings.
Yeah, for sure.
And it starts in the kitchen, and then goes to the front of the house, and my manager and everyone else.
Okay, so when you opened Crew Cafe in 2002, that was your first restaurant?
Yeah.
That you owned or started?
So I had opened a restaurant here with some people called Sonoma.
Okay.
And it was on King Street. And the owners weren't real restaurant people, but we were able to create a restaurant that was well respected. And we kind of were the first restaurant in Charleston to do real eclectic food and not just stick with the southern type of food. And we brought some ingredients in that people had never heard of, and we were a little bit skeptical about doing that, but it was well received. And after about 1.5 years, I just kind of saw that these people who were running the place weren't going to make it. They didn't have the knowledge.
Okay. So these are not restaurant people. These are...
Yeah, they wanted a coffee shop initially, and it ended up being convinced to do a restaurant.
Okay.
So
were they owner-operators, or were they just...
They were owner-operators, and they were managing, and basically I looked at it as a learning experience for me because I knew I wanted to do a restaurant eventually.
Yeah.
So every step I took throughout my career was to focus on the ultimate goal of owning a restaurant.
Okay.
And I was doing an opening, and I had done a couple openings, restaurant openings, on someone else's dime.
Yeah.
And learn from their mistakes and my mistakes.
Sure.
I knew that I wanted to do a restaurant, and eventually it would be a new restaurant, so I needed to go through restaurant openings. And that's where the consulting came in years ago, where I would go and help people open restaurants to learn the process.
Okay.
Front of the house, back of the house, all the preparation to open a restaurant. And it's kind of a high. When you're opening a restaurant, the feeling of starting something new and coming up with something different, and all of a sudden opening it up to the public and getting their response, it's absolutely an endorphin rush and a high. And I know people in this town that are actually addicted to it, where they're just continually opening restaurants.
Sure.
And because of their knowledge, they're real successful, but they love that feeling of success and that high from just achieving something that not everyone can do.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
I mean, it's difficult.
If you can do it and you can do it in volume and at scale, that's you're right. But I have to say that's a high, and you recognize that. But then the other part of this is that ability to sustain that for 20 years. That is very challenging. And
well, I mean, the statistic is that, and I don't think it is anymore, and especially in Charleston, but 50% of all restaurants fail in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's not seen here as much, and I don't really know if that's an accurate stat, but it's something that was always taught to me.
Yeah.
So that in my head kept me thinking we got to keep our game on.
Yes. Yes.
All the time.
Sure. Absolutely.
Nobody wants to fail. So like I said earlier, we surround ourselves with really good people, and that's the key. Making sure that you have good people around you that respond to what you feel is the ultimate goal.
What's the ultimate goal?
As you said, longevity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing something.
Building an institution.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, the number one goal is to make sure the people that walk in the door want to come back.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're functioning on the level that you expect from yourself. But, longevity is big.
Yeah. It's hard.
It's tiresome.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, you have to find that balance between the daily execution of the things that never go out of style, the way you treat your guests and the experience they have and the way they feel there, but then I'm sure you're having to use your creative juices all the time to evolve your menu. You're using natural ingredients. You're probably changing that and tapping into that creative side that I'm going to guess you get some of that endorphin rush when you come up with a new item that's just killer and you put it out there and people dig it.
Absolutely. Just recently, we needed to go into a menu change at Perlu, and I get a lot of my inspiration from magazines and.
Okay.
And
what magazines?
Oh, I mean, I get all of them.
Okay.
So, just cooking magazines, Bon Appetit. There's some great catering magazines out there.
Okay.
But it's not using the dish that you find in the magazine. It's looking at the dish and saying, wow, how can I recreate this my way?
Yeah, sure.
And that's what I became good at.
Okay.
Is really looking at something and saying, wow, this would be good if we did this.
Okay.
And we would go and test it and get a good response. And then that excitement of putting something on that you looked at and created on your own is really what gets that endorphin rush back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How did you wind up in Charleston, by the way?
People ask me that all the time. It's been a long trip to Charleston.
Okay.
So I, as I said earlier, I started in Los Angeles, moved up to Northern California. Then I moved to Colorado. And then from Colorado, I moved back to California and went to culinary school. And then came back to California from culinary school and knew that I needed to go somewhere that I could learn a lot more. And I went to Las Vegas and worked for Wolfgang Puck at Spago.
Oh, wow.
And that was probably the best experience because they do everything from scratch. And they're very, very well-tuned operation. So that was a wonderful experience. Did that for about a little over a year. And was offered a job opening a restaurant in Atlanta called Canoe.
Okay.
And
is it still there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's really, really good restaurant. So moved to Atlanta, not knowing anybody, and helped open this restaurant. And that was the first restaurant I helped open, as I was a sous chef there.
Okay.
So that was the initial endorphin rush that I got, that I knew that I wanted to do this.
Yeah.
And from there, the people I met in Atlanta, there were some key people in the management. They wanted to start a consulting team, and we started it in Savannah.
Okay.
So I moved to Savannah, and we started this consulting team. They also had a base restaurant, and I was running that restaurant. And so we did a couple other restaurant openings, and got that rush again. And I knew this is what I wanted to do. I knew it at that point. So we were at the point with this consulting team that we were kind of at a dead end. And there was one restaurant that we were helping open called Sonoma in Charleston.
Yeah.
And I was the consulting chef, and I just decided to stay.
Okay. And that's the one that you knew that after a while they didn't.
Yeah, I knew it wouldn't last that long. But
Well,
it was a great experience, though.
So did you start the catering business you started first?
So then after Sonoma, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel where they were not going to succeed. I moved back to California, sat down with myself and thought, what am I going to do now? I knew that I had grown a base of people that respected me in Charleston, and I already had built that for a year and a half. So moving here seemed to be the most logical option because I had already had that base of following where people knew my food, and if I was to do anything, at least I'd have that amount of people supporting me.
Yeah, good foundation.
Yep. So I moved back here, drove into town with $30,000 that my grandmother left me when she passed away and 5 credit cards, and drove down King Street or on Meeting Street, and right across the first day I got back, right across the street from Harris Teeter, there was a sign on a building for lease. It was a 700 square foot building with a really small catering kitchen in it, and $8,000 later, it's mine.
Nice.
All the equipment inside, all the lease, and that was the start. So at least I had some credit cards to live off of.
$8,000 and some credit cards. Did you? Now, have you done all this yourself, or have you taken on investors, or?
This is all me.
It's all you.
Yep.
Nice, man. My friend, congrats. That's fantastic. That's a nice position to be in.
We were fortunate, I don't know why it comes naturally to me, but we're fortunate we didn't need to hit banks up. We didn't need to hit anything up.
That's awesome. Well done, man.
Yeah.
There's not many people that can say that, and particularly ones that have been around as long as you have with a location. Now another one in 2017. That's freaking good. Especially in a town like Charleston. It ain't cheap to start a restaurant.
Well, back then the banks wouldn't do business with restaurant people.
Right.
I mean, obviously I've had to use the banks more in the last 10 years because they're much more receptive to doing business with me now.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get in the door before.
Isn't that funny? It's like when you need them the most, they don't want to hit you. And when you don't need them as much, it's like
I've got every bank calling me in Charleston.
Yeah, banks don't take a lot of front end risk. That's not how they're wired.
No. Where's the collateral?
That's more the angel folks and the VC folks.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So when we were real lucky that we were able to manage our finances real well and not create a huge debt. And I would tell anybody who's doing a restaurant, I don't see how these guys build restaurants for $5 million and succeed.
It's a lot on the front end.
They're spending $3 to $5 million to do these big restaurants.
Yeah.
But then, they're also bigger restaurants, so they're creating more revenue.
Still, it's a big risk.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned earlier, which I thought this was interesting, because you were early in your career in Breckenridge. You said that you just sort of naturally understood food costs, and that's a big thing. I mean, I think a lot of chefs have the creative side down pat and can create great food, but then the business side, the management, the financial aspect of it's a whole other side of your brain, and may not come as naturally sometimes, but you clearly have that down if you've done it the way you've done it. Where did that come from? Was that natural?
I mean, seriously, I couldn't tell you. I was terrible at math. Didn't enjoy school. So, I feel like I learned a lot from school, but wasn't able to, didn't test well.
Yeah.
So, when it came to test time, my eyes were looking out the window.
Me too. You weren't interested.
No.
If you're not interested and you're that kind of personality, if you're not interested, you're like really not interested. And if you are, you really are. But
so I've asked myself that question, what you just asked me. And I try to look back to see what in my life helped me to have that natural feeling of saving, understanding what's waste and what's right or wrong with handling food. And I really can't pinpoint it, but I came to the conclusion that although I didn't do well in school, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And applying it just came naturally to me. I never knew where it was really coming from. My whole life, my family just thought I wasn't as smart.
Yeah.
Hey, they didn't have Adderall back then.
Yeah.
Or they weren't diagnosing these. They just look and you say you're kind of not smart.
Yeah. Do you know Scott Crawford?
Yeah.
I interviewed him a couple weeks ago. We had a similar conversation, man.
Yeah.
Same deal. Just, as he called it, manic energy early on. He got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Didn't do well. And then when he found cooking, it's like, boom. Then he got to where he overdid it. Like so obsessed that he ignored his health and all that. And now he's into sobriety and everything. But anyway, I find that personality a lot in hospitality. And I share that, so I can relate to a lot of what you're talking about. And
I can't pinpoint it. So
yeah,
I am lucky that I found something that I like to do, and whatever in my life taught me between right or wrong is I'm able to apply it to this business. And I don't know if that would happen in anything else.
I'm surprised you're not on some coffee then.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of folks with this type of personality are dialing into coffee right away.
Never got into it. I really enjoyed coffee when I was in Europe, and I kind of got spoiled. It's way better there.
Yeah, it's good.
I don't know why it is, but I would drink a lot there, and came back here and just didn't taste the same.
Yeah. So the term ort?
Ort?
Yeah. I was wondering. Okay, so we're down at this camp, I'm chaperoning for my son, and when we eat the meals, they said, we are going to measure your ort after every meal. And I was like, what is ort? And all the kids are like, what? It's food waste, I guess, or whatever you leave on your plate, what you don't eat. Okay. They're trying to encourage these kids to, if you're going to put it on your plate, because it's buffet style, then you should eat it.
Yeah.
Of course, I got this table of 12 boys, and they think it's funny to, have their goal is to not have any, and of course they were wanting to create the most. And they had a bunch this morning, and I had this guy, I said, weigh ours individually, because they weigh it for the whole school. I said, weigh ours individually, and we had 2 pounds. And I'm not going to be there for lunch because I'm here doing this. And I told the guy, I said, if they have 1 ounce of ort for lunch today, they're going to pay a big price.
What does that stand for?
I don't know. But that's what I don't know if it's their term. But
it kind of brings up a memory for me. When I was younger, we had to make a happy plate. My parents looked at me and said, hey, finish your food.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, we couldn't leave the table without a glass of milk, but...
Yeah, yeah. Well, what we told them, it was like, they were like, well, I got full. But just don't put it on the plate then. Like, just put on the plate what you're going to eat or whatever, and you're in control of that. So anyway, I'm interested to see
that's kind of crazy that you say
order.
that, with catering, when we do... we have a function and we're putting food out on a buffet, which is, we don't do it as much. We have other ways of serving people now that have worked real well. But when we have a buffet, you see people just stacking this food on their plate.
Yeah.
And then they don't eat any of it.
At all.
And how can people be that? I don't get.
We're disconnected, man.
Yeah.
We're not connected to our food anymore. We don't hunt it. We don't cultivate it. We don't kill it. We don't butcher it. We don't grow it. We don't tend to it. It's just there. It's like, oh, well, here's this big, and I don't think that's a great thing.
No, and I'm not just saying this happens occasionally. This happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
They stack their plates. Maybe they felt that they can eat more or whatever, but they don't eat it all. And I look at them and I just feel like they just don't get it.
I think we've lost because food is so readily available, whether it's good quality real food or some mass-produced, something that's in a package and in the middle aisles of the grocery. It's just so freaking available now that we don't really appreciate as much. I say we don't. However, I think very much that because we're becoming not just disconnected from our food, but from other people with these devices and these screens, and we're all in these little worlds all the time, that I actually think that folks like you and your team and what you do are becoming more and more meaningful and valuable in the communities you serve, because it's one place you can go and it feels right to put your phone aside and sit there and have a meaningful conversation and have food that you know has been prepared with love and care, and enjoy that. And I think that the more we, in so many aspects of our life, that we get disconnected, that the place where we can connect becomes like much more meaningful. That's my little theory.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of truth to all that. I know that as a kid, I had to be home by 5 o'clock for dinner.
Yeah.
And
with your family.
I didn't have a cell phone. They didn't know where I was, and they just knew that I had to be home at 5, or 5:30, whatever it was. Too. And then also every Friday night we had dinner at my grandmother's house.
Yeah.
With my family.
Yeah.
Every Friday night.
Yeah.
No exception.
Yep.
And I don't think that's happening anymore, and the disconnect with food is a huge part of that. You know, food creates families.
Yes.
And they create, in my mind, closeness in families, and everyone's celebrating the food on the table. And I don't know if it's not happening anymore, but I'm pretty sure it's not.
It's not, dude. It's not. I mean, it's not.
So, I mean, the disconnect also is with their cell phones and everything else, and all the electronic devices that people are tied up in now. They feel that's the connection, and it's not.
No. It isn't at all. It's unfortunate. I mean, my kids are, we struggle with that because they're this generation that grows up on these things, and they don't even know how to they don't have a phone conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all this text and stuff. But I think that there's this natural wiring that we want to be a part of a community, we want to be a part of something, and we want to have this connection that we're losing. So when I go to a place like Crew or Perlu, that's where you're going to find that. You're going to find it with the person you're with or the people you're with. You're going to find it with the engaging staff. You're going to find it when the food that you can tell. You know when food's been prepared thoughtfully and with intention versus like you go to a big chain and it's just done at scale and it's just a process and it's just a totally different experience.
You know, when we opened the cafe initially, one of my concerns was that the tables were too close to each other. It's a small restaurant, but we wanted to get as many seats in as we could. And the same with Perlu. You know, I think we have 32 seats at Perlu and 34 inside at the cafe. But my initial concern of people dining so close to each other was erased immediately when the people who were dining next to each other were conversing with each other.
Right.
And then they were exchanging phone numbers.
And they had never met each other.
No.
And where else do you do that now?
I have no idea where.
Nowhere.
A bar?
Somewhere in hospitality.
Yeah.
You don't do it anywhere else. And like that's it. That's why it's so meaningful.
So, you know, some people will still come in and say, wow, the tables were too close. The guy next to me was on top of me. But a lot of them are building these friendships and responding on social media saying, oh, and we sat next to these people and they were so nice and they told us what they liked and they told us of another restaurant in town to go to. And that kind of reminded me of that feeling I used to get when we were having that Friday night dinner.
Yes, sir.
All right? These
Amen.
people are creating memories themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
And bonding over food.
Well, we're not around our extended families as much now. We've moved around. You know, we don't have like both grandparents and cousins and everybody's in town, and we go to. So we look for that. And we need it. So when you have a opportunity like that, it's a wonderful thing. People do that, and they're like, "Wow, that was refreshing. I didn't even plan to meet somebody new tonight." And
you know, on another note with that, I mean, a lot of people complain about how restaurants are too loud now.
Yeah.
To me, I get what they're saying, but to me that creates part of the vibe and gets you more involved in the crowd.
Yeah. Right.
I don't want to be in a really loud restaurant, and I'm constantly trying to get Perlu to a level that's more manageable as far as the noise level goes. But I do feel that creates a certain amount of electricity where people are actually understanding that the people next to them are also enjoying this experience, and maybe, you know, we can talk to these people and see what they're thinking.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But ultimately, family's number one, and that it's sad that people don't experience what I did as a child, and most of the people I knew had that same experience in their lives.
Sure. Absolutely.
But this started with people taking too much food and wasting food. And, maybe at that point in my life, I realized what was put out is what we need to eat. And there was never an abundance of it where we were just saying, oh, well, let's throw away half of this because we didn't eat it. It was always something that was managed, and I don't know how that my grandmother or my mother managed that, but it was always managed properly. The food we had is what we ate.
Yeah. Well, it's care, thought, intention, love, all those ingredients went into that for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. It's, look, I hear you, brother. I mean, that is, it's a dying thing, but I really passionately believe that what y'all are doing is becoming more and more meaningful in our cultures, in our society today, because it is the only place that you do that. You don't do that anywhere else. You don't. People are wherever else you go, the airport, the library, the whatever, a park. They're locked in.
They're not talking to people.
No, they're not. So it's one place to do that. Let me ask you this: you have clearly a incredible team. I'll take a little bit more too. You've got great people here. I bet a lot of them have been with you for a long time.
Thank you.
What are the, obviously you treat them well and you take good care of them and you respect them, and thank you, Angel. You lead by example. I can tell that without even having to ask you. What types of ancillary benefits other than good pay and things like that are you able to provide? Because that's hard in a small restaurant situation or a small group of restaurants, like healthcare, things like that. Those things are just, skyrocketing.
I feel like I do pay well.
Yeah.
And I try to keep up with what's going on out there, but I don't know why people, I have, somebody managing the cafe, or my chef at the cafe has been with me, I think 15 years.
Yeah.
And she's progressed through all the positions, and now she's my chef de cuisine or executive chef. Either title's good for her, but
that's awesome.
She did a podcast recently with somebody, and I was trying to get out of the podcast from her why she loves and sticks around for so long. And she just said, "It's my home. Everything I've gone through in my life, I've experienced it here."
Yeah.
And, they meaning me, have been there in my rough times, and we treat people like people.
Yeah.
And we make sure that if they're having personal issues, which everyone has, is that we help them as much as we can, or at least we offer to. And, one of the biggest problems I've had through the 20 some odd years of doing this is that I want to be friends with all these people. Being friends with people you work with is the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Of anything in this business.
Well, especially if you manage them.
Exactly. So, initially I became friends with everybody, and we'd hang out outside of work, and I had to stop that. But, that feeling of being friends with the person who is your boss, I think really forms a connection.
Yeah.
And, they got to like you. They're not going to work for you. They're not going to work hard if they don't like you.
They got to like you. They have to respect you. There's a balance. Yeah. There's an art that you've probably figured out through trial and error every time of what that balance is between, being close to them personally, but also having
So I really don't know the answer to that, but I'm fortunate to have good people that have stuck around.
Absolutely.
I've got several people who worked for me over 10 years, and, having that conversation with them at a point in your work relationship of, hey, are you still liking this? Where you're at, where's your head at? If you're not, let's do something different, and maybe keep it more interesting for people, and not have them do the same thing every day.
Right.
I always walk into the cafe and say, okay, you've been on the station now for a year. You've worked for me for the last 10 years. How you feeling? We need to get you learning more. We need to get you helping with specials. We need to get you on another station. We need to do something to keep your interest.
Sure.
And the fact that I show concern with that, I think that's a big reason why they want to work.
I think it's a huge reason, because one of the things that we all share is we want validation, and we want people to care about us and know us. And
I mean, they're people.
yeah,
They're not just bodies.
That's right. Well, it's interesting. You came up. You know, you talked earlier about the front of the house, and you weren't really into that scene. But boy, through your career, you must have seen a big change in the way the kitchens are run. I mean, you even had TV shows with these guys yelling and screaming, and that was like celebrated. And that's not.
Oh, no. I mean, I was going to mention that earlier.
That doesn't cut mustard now. Nobody puts up with that now. They'll just quit. Like,
exactly. I
yeah.
mean, there's not that many people in our workforce now, but you know, the transition from becoming that screaming chef, which was the way it was years ago,
mm-hmm.
I put that aside 4 years in,
Yeah.
3 or 4 years in. You can't treat these people that way, and I did. I beat on some people.
Yeah. Well, but that was like what you did then, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's kind of like every kitchen you worked in, that was kind of the MO.
It's how they taught me to teach people.
Yeah. Yeah.
By by being really direct to the point and forceful with
Yeah.
the way you're teaching people, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, you might get people to you might get results short term, but you're not going to get somebody that's going to stick with you for a long time if you're doing. They're always going to have their eye, somewhere else, right? When they're feeling like they're just not being respected. So it's nice to see the industry do. The industry's going through a lot of changes, and it's good to see that type of leadership changing. It's good to see. It's good to see what Steve and was it Mickey, that Ben's friends, what
Yeah.
those guys are doing with
Mm-hmm.
sobriety. That's a good thing.
Actually, the gentleman they named that after, Ben, was part of our consulting team in Savannah, and we became good friends. So obviously it was sad to hear what happened to him, but the fact that they're carrying his name on in a good way is really rewarding.
It's fantastic. It's a great thing. Love seeing that. Love seeing a lot of the change in this industry. You mentioned that you had your sous chef or executive chef on a podcast. Do you listen to podcasts? I know you listen to that one, but do you ever listen to podcasts?
I don't.
You don't?
I'm not. I still wonder what it is.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Just, what did we used to call it? I mean, it's just videotaping conversation, right?
Yeah, or just yeah. I mean, it's
I don't know.
There's some that are.
Where do you get them? Where do you know? Where do you get a podcast?
You got to get the podcast. You get a little podcast app, and then you subscribe. It's like subscribing to, I don't know, whatever. Like going on Netflix and having TV shows. I want this one and this one and this one. Podcasts are just like that. I listen to a lot of them. I enjoy them. I like hearing people's stories, hearing people talk, sharing what they do, what they love. What do you do in your free time? Because I mean, that got me interested, because it's I read that you spend time thinking about the business in your free time. What else do you do?
I mean, right now, the last year's been quite challenging. My family's 3,000 miles away, so I've had to spend some time out there the last year to assist them in their older age. And it's kind of been a whirlwind where when I'm in Charleston, I'm getting very caught up with what my duties are, and then go to Los Angeles, spend some time there, and then come back, and everything's built up again. So it's just like it's starting over. I mean, it's a big roller coaster ride of, all right, get all this work done. You're on the top of the roller coaster. You're able to leave town. You're on the bottom, and you come back up, and that pile's built up again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, personally, thank God I have some great people that surround me, and I get to hang out with them when I can.
Yeah.
But, being an owner and operator is definitely a challenging position to be in, and we're constantly evolving and making sure that things are running properly. So it consumes a lot of time.
doing what you're doing, having to travel back and forth, operating in a town like Charleston, which is highly competitive and just so many great things going on here. So dude, you got a lot figured out, man. Congrats.
Like I said, you got to have good people around you.
Yeah, but good people attract good people, and you know that. I mean, you're going to be humble about it, as it was I expected, but there's a reason that they stay with her. There's a reason that she feels like it's home. I mean, it's because of the way she's treated by the person who owns the business, and all the staff will feel the same. You're a caring dude and thoughtful and intentional, and it matters to you how people feel when they come here, and it's not all about you. And dude, that's why they're here. That's why they come. That's why they stay.
Bottom line is, life is short. You need to have people around you that enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, you're not going to enjoy your life, and it's going to be a constant battle to catch up.
Yeah, sure. Anything on the horizon? I mean, you just opened Prelude.
No more restaurants.
Yeah, no more restaurants. Yeah. I bet you were saying that before Prelude too. You'll get there.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
I mean, that was 18 years later that we opened Prelude. So,
Yeah.
I mean, part of
Cut it in half.
some of
do another one in 9.
the write-ups we had was after 18 years, they're doing another restaurant. Oh, why? And I just wanted that energy back.
Why? Really? God.
Do you remember those?
That's so frustrating.
Yeah, well, you can't read everything that's written on the internet. I mean, if you do, you will go crazy.
Oh, for sure.
I can't please everybody.
I can't imagine having to deal with Yelp reviews. That would drive me nuts.
I don't read them. I read them occasionally. And if I see a bad one, I pass it on to my manager so they can react. But
Yeah.
Ultimately, if you read those all the time, it will bring you down mentally.
It will, and the thing about it is you're not seeing the full picture, right? You're just seeing these little slivers of negativity when everybody else is happy and they're positive and they had a great experience. So great that they didn't take the time to go to Yelp because most people are going to go there when they're pissed or whatever.
I mean, everyone's a critic. We had a review recently at Perlou where they just didn't have a good experience. They didn't like our wine glasses. They just didn't like it. They didn't like the concept.
Yeah.
That was it. I'm not going to call people and convince them to come back if they didn't like the concept.
Right, sure.
All right, I can't please 100% of the population, but if I can please 99%, I'm fine with that.
One of the things that you're really doing well, clearly, is, it's something that we built this business, Schedule Fly, on. It's, okay, who is our ideal customer? Like, what is that person like? And we said, well, it's independent restaurants, and it's people that really care deeply about who they serve. They care about the product that they put on the plate. They care about their community, and they like simple solutions. And they're not relying on technology to be what makes their restaurant great. They want little technology because they know that people matter, and that's what we said. Okay, like that's who we can please. People that want to, I can't please them. Like whatever. Yeah. There's other places to go. There's other restaurants for people that are, let them go somewhere else. Because the ones that are happy, more opportunity for them to come back.
I mean, I've walked into restaurants and not felt comfortable when people have great reviews of it. And it just maybe wasn't something that was for me, and I fully understand that.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to wrap this up. I want to respect your time, but how do you feel about the Dodgers?
Go Blue.
Go Blue.
They're good this year.
They are, man. I feel like 2 years ago it was kind of some bad decisions against Houston. I feel like we could have taken that. Last year I felt like the Red Sox were just
here's
better.
a great story I got to tell you since you like the Dodgers.
Yes.
So I have a car. It's an old BMW, and it got flooded in a hurricane. And it wasn't a bad flood, but eventually the insurance company totaled it, and they paid me off on the car. So they put a red flag on the title, but it could still be utilized. So I put some money into that, to fixing it, and I took the rest of the money and bought my family World Series tickets.
No. Was this last year or 2 years ago?
The Houston series.
Oh.
So I flew out to Los Angeles, took my sister, my mother, my father, my brother-in-law to a World Series game. And, you know, I don't think it was illegal to utilize that money in that way. But when we're walking into the game, the insurance carrier was a huge sponsor, and there was a huge sign as you walk into the game of the insurance carrier's name. And all we could do is look at the sign and thank them.
That's awesome.
So I was fortunate to see a World Series game, which I'd never done.
Did we win that one? Which game?
It went 11 innings.
Yes.
And we ended up losing, but it was one of the best games I've ever seen in my life.
Phenomenal game.
Unbelievable.
I remember saying the next day, it sucked to lose, but just to watch that was like...
I'm getting chills right now thinking about it, because the energy that you feel in a stadium when there's that much on the line and,
yes,
and so much competitiveness and so much back and forth. I mean, it was amazing.
Every single pitch. If you don't play... I played baseball, and I love baseball. Like, people are like, baseball's boring. But, dude, you either... Like, if you get it fully, and it's just amazing, because especially playoff baseball, it's like every single pitch matters.
I'd never done it live.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I hope they get back. It would be great for them to win one this year.
Well, we will keep our fingers crossed.
I told all the kids in my cabin last night, I said, the Dodgers are going to win the World Series this year. Just, you need to know that. They will win.
They haven't had enough significant games down the road, so that's my only concern.
I agree. Yeah. Well, it'll be fun.
They locked it in so early.
8:30 tonight, right?
I'll be there.
Yeah. Love it. John, thank you very, very much. Angel, thank you for putting this together. This is awesome. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the business, man. You are, like when I said, like you are the perfect customer, in quotes.
You know, by the way, the schedule fly is working really well for us, and it really helps us to communicate with our staff in a way that's so much easier. And, you know, we're glad to be using it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Hopefully it helps you when you're out there and 3,000 miles away to have a way to stay engaged.
I don't do that.
Oh, you don't?
No. My managers do that.
Your managers do that. I hear you, man. Well, good. Well, listen, thank you very much for the time. Thank you for what you're doing for the culinary scene here in Charleston and what you do. And we didn't talk about this. We'll do it maybe another time, what you do. I know you do a lot of community work and you have some interests that you're very passionate about within the community. So just thank you, man. Thank you for everything. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. And, you know, we'll keep fighting the fight.
I hear you, man. All right. Y'all, that is a wrap. We'll have another episode soon. See ya.